What is the Uttarakhand's Uniform Civil Code template for marriage? Not just marriage, in fact, marriage, divorce and inheritance. What does it mean for Hindus, Muslims, Christians and other religious minorities or religious stakeholders in India? What will change for you and me? We look at this from the prism of feminism and religious minority. It is complex because it isn't as black and white as I may describe it as of now. But I am being joined by a panel of experts to help us see through what may be the black spots for many. But for the next minute and a half, let me give you an overview. Let's look at inheritance law. And bear with me, it seems the longest. There are largely three succession laws currently: the Indian Succession Act 1925, the Hindu Succession Act 1956, and the uncodified Muslim personal law. The scheme of succession in the Uniform Civil Code Bill resembles the same as mostly under the Indian Succession Act. For people who die without leaving a will, the Class 1 heirs under the UCC bill are the spouse, the children, and both the parents, father and the mother of the deceased. All of them will get an equal share in the property of the deceased person. This has not been something that has been otherwise the norm, particularly when it comes to the father and mother both being involved. When it comes to Muslims, it won't be only bequeathing up to, say, 1/3 of their property to anyone of their choice through a will. In case of a will now, there doesn't need to be any restriction on the limit. Earlier, 2/3 of succession was decided by the Quran and Hadith. And frankly, there are two sides to this. We'll get to that during the discussion. For Hindus, the Uttarakhand UCC bill repeals all existing laws that are inconsistent with the 2005 amendment, which allowed daughters as equal shareholders and applies the same scheme of succession to all persons irrespective of religion. For Christians, there are some key changes as well. Parents of deceased as well as children and grandchildren all will be entitled. The disparity between fathers and mothers' right of inheritance seems to change drastically as well. When it comes to marriage, the Uniform Civil Code brings the minimum age of marriage to 18 and 21 for men and women, and this will have considerable impact with respect to the Muslim personal laws on marriage that allows, say, puberty as the age of marriage. Polygamy has been banned. When it comes to divorce, both men and women can approach a court to file for divorce on grounds of adultery, mental or physical cruelty, spouse desertion, without any reasonable cause, religious conversion by the spouse, and soundness of mind, and several other aspects as well. Women have special rights to seek divorce if the husband has been found guilty of rape or any other offense related to unnatural sex, and if the husband has more than one wife. Well, let me just also say this right at the beginning. We won't be diving deep into the very controversial aspect of the Uniform Civil Code with respect to live-in partners. And that's because Mirror Now has focused on it amply, including the laws of parental consent that would be required if you're below the age of 21 years of age, the registrations that the live-in couples need to do. But we would look into what is the right to inheritance for also children born out of the wedlock, and whether there is any change to this, what is the status currently and what is changing. Let me get into introducing my panel at this point. I'm being joined by Rami Desai, who's an author and political analyst, Dipali Sharma, a social activist, Tahira Hassan, women rights activist, Advocate Ahmed Ayaz, a political analyst, as well as John Dayal, a human rights activist. Thank you very much, all five of you, for joining me. Well, Tahira Hassan, let me just get over to you. In fact, let me just do one thing. Let me give one minute to each of you for you to make your introductory remarks on how you see these three particular aspects we've spoken about with respect to UCC and Uttarakhand and the larger picture. Why don't you start, Tahira Hassan?
First thing is that the age of the marriage has been increased. I welcome it because I believe that if the girl is not mature and she is young, she is exposed to pregnancy and undergo to violence, malnourishment, and her body is not biologically fit to bear the child. But thing is this, that in Uttarakhand, this is not a uniform civil code. It is a selective civil code, because when you exempted the tribals where the multi-wife culture is there in Northeast, you are not taking in account to it. Then how can you say that you are interested in gender justice? We are interested in gender justice. So I think this is to be noted down. This is to be taken very seriously.
Okay.
And I believe the personal laws must be codified and on basis based on progressive interpretation. Reform the regressive
All right.
laws.
Okay.
Reform the laws which are discriminatory
Okay.
against the women, like triple talaq has been abandoned now. So thing is this, that you want to bring the uniform civil code or you want to bring the selective civil
Okay.
code. This is also very important question that exists. The age is increased. We all
Okay, Ms.
welcome,
Tahira,
because
let me
in
just
the
get back to you. Let me get the introductory remarks from others as well. John Dayal, how do you look at this?
I look at it, first of all, I wish I were a woman. I could have given you a more considered view. But this is like what we call a clergyman's egg. It is good in parts, bad in parts. But an egg which is bad in parts is a bad egg. Why should I pick up small things to say these are good and the rest is bad? The whole law is mischievous, motivated to target Muslims, and leaves most other communities at a sort of loss from what they were earlier. It is no progress at all. And why should Uttarakhand be the only Devbhoomi? To me, the whole of Bharat is Devbhoomi.
All right. Okay. So John Dayal here mentioning that he sees this as partly good, partly bad. A partly bad egg is entirely bad. Advocate Ahmad Ayaz, how do you look at this? What are your introductory remarks on this, particularly with respect to these three aspects we're talking about?
See, India being a multi-religious and cultural country with many communities with different traditions, so it won't be possible or practicable to bring them on one uniformly some code, which we call civil code. And that is different, that we may do it. That would be a different thing. But the point is, how will you deal with the community, which has its own personal law? How will you deal with the community, which has its own laws about inheritance, marriages, and then what we call it...
No, but if you have the UCC, doesn't
divorces.
it subserviate the entire
I mean,
personal law? Isn't that the whole point? Isn't that the understanding?
Yeah, yes, because so far as, if at all you talk of Muslim personal law, everything is well defined for the Muslims. There is nothing. You may look it at a different, you may look it from your own point of view. But to Muslims, everything is good. There is no problem, there is no difficulty with anyone. We have law of inheritance, we have law.
Let me just get in the other two people also on the panel. We're just positioning all of our panelists on what they believe in.
Everything defined.
Okay. Dipali Sharma?
Sorry?
Dipali Sharma, would you want to introduce your standing on this?
You're asking me?
Yes, Dipali Sharma.
Hello, so yeah.
I'm not sure if that was to me because I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
All right, we seem to have some problem there. Rami Desai, and if my team can fix the line for Dipali Sharma. Rami Desai, how do you look at these three aspects we're discussing? What is your position with respect to the UCC?
Hi, good evening. I'm glad I can hear you. For a minute, I thought I couldn't. But let me just say this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to look at this legally. But as a woman, let me tell you that the Unified Civil Code will ensure gender equality. The gentleman just before me was saying that there isn't a problem. If there wasn't a problem, sir, a contingent of women would not have approached the Women's Commission during the time of Triple Talaq, when that debate happened, But UCC will provide equal status to all citizens, irrespective of the community they belong to. And I really do think that the Uniform Civil Code will give more rights to women, as sometimes religious personal laws might be a little misogynistic, might be a little out of tune with the times today, so it will at least help bring changes in the age old traditions that have no relevance any longer in today's modern changing society, where women should be given equal rights.
Okay.
And when it comes to minority
right.
women, let me also say this, that if there isn't a UCC, there wouldn't be the kind of equality across religious lines. See, we don't complain about it in countries like USA, Canada, Australia, UK, Russia, where a UCC has been adopted. For some strange reason, in India, it becomes debatable.
All right. Dipali Sharma, how do you look at what's happening in Uttarakhand currently?
Yeah, so for me, the whole idea of UCC is fundamentally is one which we are looking at providing gender justice. So if you look at gender justice, it should apply to all women. So irrespective of caste, class, religion and all. So in that sense, I would say that, yes, this is a one step which has been taken, an important step. And of course, if you talk of there are various, maybe we'll have to really review it from the point of view of gender justice lens. How does all women across all the religions, caste, class are able to access it? So that is how, we will look at the whole idea and looking at from the constitutionally and enshrined principles of equality and freedoms and liberty to all women. So definitely there will be gaps which will need to be analyzed. So for example, you spoke about the increasing child marriage of age of marriage, or for example, the inheritance. Existing laws are also there, but basis of our work that we do, we know that these are not implemented. So if you even look at Hindu Succession Act, so daughters are given equal rights, but within that there are discriminatory practices and how it is implemented. So there are a whole set of issues which need to be really reviewed and analyzed and seen it from that aspect. And actually, how does it provide gender justice to women across all religions? But the idea is that it should provide justice to women across
Tahira
all.
Hassan, let me just come to you. You heard, just before you heard Advocate Ahmad Ayaz speak, and Advocate Ahmad Ayaz said that, listen, everything is fine with the personal laws. Everything is fine with the Muslim personal laws. What is wrong with it? Why do you require something absolutely separately? How do you really respond to something like that as a woman and as a Muslim?
You're asking to me?
That's right, Ms. Tahira Hassan.
Yes. No. I believe there are discriminatory laws. In all personal laws, they are discriminatory against the women. That's why I say better codify it based on the progressive interpretation and reform the discriminatory laws where the women is discriminated, and where the laws which are assault on the women, they must be reformed immediately. This is what we are saying. We are fighting against the triple talaq in one go also.
So do you
and it is
see,
not Islamic triple talaq in one go. It is not mentioned once in the Quran. So like that, there are many laws in all the religion. Mitakshara, see, there is a branch in Hindus. They don't believe in giving the inheritance right to the daughter. So it's not only the Muslims, but this type of discriminatory practices are existing in all religions. So now India is run by the constitution, and that says that each and everyone is equal before the law, irrespective to caste, creed, and gender. So talk of the gender justice. So I think tribals must also come in this purview. This is what I wanted to say. In Northeast, they keep the multiple wives. Is it okay? Is not a assault on gender justice. So when we are talking about the gender justice, so we should move towards it. It's not only lip service.
Absolutely.
This is
No,
what I'm
what I'm
saying.
trying to understand here is when you are saying we should get in line with the constitution, are you seeing this move in Uttarakhand with the UCC as a line towards the constitution, or are you seeing it in line with the personal laws and saying this is, just something so superficial and needs a totally different, is in a totally different trajectory?
You know, the UCC is mentioned in constitution. You go through it. It is mentioned, but it is written. You cannot force it. You create the atmosphere like that and then implement it. UCC
Okay.
is mentioned, again I repeat
Do you
it,
think
in our
so? Is that what you're saying,
constitution.
that the environment has not been created in Uttarakhand or elsewhere? Is that what your concern
Yes,
is?
discussion and debate, these things should go on. And then after this, you implement it, you make
Okay.
it. And then we must move towards gender justice. It is a high time. Codify all the personal laws. We don't want any discriminatory laws against women. That cannot
So
be
you are
accepted by
for
any women in the
codification of laws,
country.
whether it is
Women are
personal or
also,
uniform.
no, personal laws must be reformed, discriminatory. Which are discriminatory practices
Okay.
are existing
All right.
must be reformed. Immediately, I said must be reformed.
Okay. John Dayal. John Dayal.
Nobody wants.
John
Nobody
Dayal,
wants that.
it was very interesting for
Yeah.
me to when you spoke
Yes.
about your stand, you spoke about how this is something against Muslims. You did not really bring in the Christians, because I want to understand why that really perspective of only Muslims. Also, my question to you would be, there are certain laws within
No,
the
no, no, no,
Christian
no.
fraternity as well that are seen not really from a very gender equitable lens. So something like this coming in, do you see it as a step forward, considering there are one parental rights that are coming in, a succession rights? Do you see that as a step forward, or do you just blanket say it is against minorities?
No, 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 no. I used the blanket term because you wanted an opening statement, and I did not want my further developments
Right.
to be stymied by my opening statement. Let me go step by step. A.
Sure.
It is not true that the West does not protect local rights. In the United States of America, the indigenous people, what we once used to call pejoratively Red Indians, their rights are protected. The land has been taken away by the white man, but their cultural rights are protected, as in many African states, as even in the former Soviet republics. Some rights there. Societies develop at differential rates. The law may change. Society needs time to be nurtured, to be pushed, to be nudged towards that. And that is what I'm saying. In the church itself, there's nothing biblical which denies woman her right. The Old Testament was patriarchal, but Jesus was a friend of women. So, but in Kerala and Meghalaya, the rights of women are diagonally opposite. Even in the Devbhoomi of Uttarakhand, even for Hindus, both polyandry exists and polygamy exists. But under the rubric of tribal rights, you're condoning. Is the tribal woman less of a human being and less of a citizen than the non-tribal woman, than the non-tribal man? So there's a basic flaw. And therefore I said it seems to be unholy in its motive. If it is towards nudging societies, including the church, including Christianity, towards progress, towards reforms, I would be totally for it. But that would require, as in the Hindu Code Bill, it was a big struggle. It was a struggle after the upper caste Hindus who were dead against it. They were dead against Sharda Act. It took years and years and years of a whole brilliant people to nudge them towards it. I think that process is a good process. Allow communities, nudge them towards progress, allow the native urge to progress. Communities want to progress. That's how the evolution of canon law, the evolution of all law, is a process of evolving. It is not a process of dictatorship.
John Dayal, when you look at UCC, one of the arguments that the BJP has been putting forward from the beginning is that it is in the directive principles whatsoever. But the second aspect of this is what you have been bringing out, and that these changes aren't from within. But the challenge really is most of these religions are so patriarchal, top down, from the top. If you look at it, these religions are so patriarchal, whether it be Hinduism, Muslims, or Christians, irrespective of whatever difference we relate. Absolutely. So if you want things to evolve and change from within, even today, despite a very strong court verdict, you still are struggling for women to get equal rights of succession. Even within Christianity, for that matter, despite having very strong laws in it for it.
Absolutely, that's what I said. Look at the Mary case. But what I was saying was a step ahead of that. My point is that societies want to progress. Religions also want to progress. It is not that religions don't want to progress. It is how you look at it. Directive principles were made directive principles for a reason. They were not enacted as law because in 1947 and up to 26 January, it was deemed that it would create problems rather than solving problems. Therefore, it was put in the Thandabasta, the cold storage of the rights. Look at the law on beef. The BJP itself permits beef eating in the states it wants to govern, but bans it elsewhere. Look at the whole issue of liquor. Governments run
all right.
liquor shops across the country. And yet,
Right. I get you're trying to differentiate about how there are dual stands in governance vis-a-vis the states and the politics involved. Let me just get in Advocate Ahmed Ayaz, please, at this point. Advocate Ahmed Ayaz, you made a statement that everything is fine with the personal laws. That's hugely sweeping. Now, let's just look at some of the rules that seem to have changed, at least when we look at it with a cursory glance. Now, the fact that, the personal law allows for puberty to be the criteria for marriage. Some say it is 13, but frankly, that's an age that is changing quite drastically across. It could be well below 13 for that matter. If you're talking of the times that we are living in. If you're talking about, say, the will and the succession, if you have a will and if you don't have a will. If you look at all these aspects, and women on our panel have also referred to it, all is not well with the personal law. So why? I mean, you may have issues with a UCC, but why just blanket everything and say everything is well with the personal law? And it's not about Muslims, please. I'm talking about across religions.
Actually, no issue. You can, it's well taken. Point is, this is generally said that the Muslim personal laws are discriminatory towards women, which is not. It is not that. And 2 points have been brought out right now. One that pertaining to divorces, and then the inheritance. You see, divorces is I think the hardest decision in Islam. That may be a different thing that somebody must have used in one word or so. There is nothing in Islam that one talaq like that what has been practiced by certain people. That means that they are doing something wrong. But the law itself is not wrong. There is a provision that even women have a right to divorce under khula if she does not find comfortable with the husband. So I don't think it is anywhere else. There is no compulsion. It is most open and liberal for both to live together. It's the divorce is in extreme conditions. It's not that just khula and khula. Talaq and talaq. But unfortunately, it has been misused, said to be misused by certain people. That, of course, I do agree. Otherwise, the law itself is not bad.
Okay.
So far, the inheritance is
I know
concerned,
you're waiting, but I have to get Tahira to respond to Advocate Ahmed Ayaz. Yeah, I have my opinions, but I'll keep my opinions to myself. Frankly, this is something that needs to be answered by Tahira. Tahira, do you want to respond to what you heard Advocate Ahmed Ayaz speak?
No, there are discrimination in personal law, Emma Saab, but it is not Quranic, as I said. The triple talaq in one go, not mentioned one in Quran, but this all the personal law board and all, they were so adamant on that. No, this we cannot go for the reform and all. So what happened? The Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, stood with us, and they were defeated in this case. So I think there are discrimination in all religion. There are discriminatory laws against women in all religions. I gave the example of Mitakshara. You go through the Goa Civil Code. The man that says that man can go for second wife if the first wife fails to deliver son by the age of 30. This is such an assault on the women. There's no gender justice. Can you see there is any gender justice? When we're talking of making a better society, better laws for the women. So, I mean, these type of laws
All
we
right.
don't want. And this type of discrimination exists in each and every religion. Our society is patriarchal. Patriarchy is deep rooted. That makes the guideline to control the women's sexuality and her independence. So I think
All
that
right.
we need a laws that just give the equal rights to all women. The women, all, I'm not talking only Muslim women, women of this country, they are also the citizen of this country. So they have right to have access on all facilities. So their rights cannot be denied. This is what our constitution says. So I think that
So
the personal
are you then
laws
saying
must be
if you have a
codified.
UCC that includes tribals and other sections is more inclusive, you would be more pro UCC? Is that what you're saying? Are you then saying that the
Yes,
inclusivity in the
UCC.
UCC is really the issue and not the way it has been brought about? Is that what you're saying, Ms. Tahira?
Yes, this is what I'm saying. The Uttarakhand, they are calling it uniform civil code. It's a selective civil code. You are exempting tribals,
All right.
where the
Okay.
North
Let me
East,
just
they
get in.
kill the
I'm left
multiple
with very
wives.
less time. Let me just get in Dipali Sharma. Right. Thank you, Ms. Tahira. Let me just get in Dipali Sharma. Dipali, listen, it's not, and as all the panelists here have said, and even you have spoken, it's not religion specific. Even Hinduism is going to see some stark changes, particularly with respect to succession. But while you speak about that and while you mention that, Dipali, would you want to possibly look into the fact of how there are concerns that this seems to be a majoritarianism being sprung over or thrusted over the minorities? How do you see that argument from the lens of feminism and gender? Because this is an important concern across the country. Many across the religious minorities and gender minorities, and it's not just men and women, you have the third gender, which we are really not clear about how much of that is represented. However, that just widens it all so much. But however, I'm getting into this whole aspect of how do you look at it from this prism of inclusivity?
Yeah, so when we are saying that gender justice, as I said earlier, the law, any law should be able to apply equally to women across any communities, irrespective of whatever religion, caste they belong to. So as other panelists, Tahira ji was also mentioning, I mean, I would not go into whether it is thrusting of majoritarianism on the minority communities here. I would actually look at it from the point of across religions or even other ethnicities, race, tribal communities, whatever discriminatory practices exist, whatever gender unjust practices exist, and there are maybe some progressive practices. So how do we identify those practices, regressive practices across each of these communities, and build laws to ensure that they are made gender just? And such discriminatory practices are across all religions. I mentioned the example of even when there are progressive legislations like the Hindu Succession Act I mentioned. So it only provides equal property rights to daughters. So what about the wives or the women or the mother there? So those kind of, even then look at the structural discrimination which happens. So when even the purchase of property is only largely in the name of men members only, so how would the women get access in that case? So inherent injustices, discriminatory practices, structural discrimination, inequities which exist across religions and communities, I would say, needs to be addressed through this kind of legislative provisions. And I would say this is a step which has been taken, and actually it should have been an incremental step. So identify each of those such practices and build legislations around this. So we have various such other progressive individual legislation, and that is how we should have looked into an incremental practice. But now that this is there, I'm saying we should look at it from a gender justice lens, and whatever gaps are there, those needs to be filled. So whatever positive steps in that sense, like age of marriage, what you mentioned, is a progressive thing. So let us move with that and identify the gaps and build those further. The idea of legislating any personal law or family law, as I mean, I would quote Dr. Ambedkar, who mentioned there, is to bring about reform in the social system. So reform in the social system will again, I would say, not just come with the legislation,
I'm just left
but
with very
there are
less time. Let me just go over to Rami Desai, please.
Mechanisms required. So how do we build the agency of women there to
Fair
also
enough.
take
Rami
those forward?
Desai.
Will be important steps to be taken.
Rami Desai, how do you look at this particular aspect, which, all panelists really have brought in? While they are saying that there are some progressive measures, and no panelist really has said that these measures are not progressive or all of them are not progressive. They have contended to the fact that it is progressive. But the concerns here is, one, majoritarianism versus minoritarianism. Two, is this agenda setting? Three, this was not incremental in nature. How do you look at this as a woman and the measures that have been taken?
Look, a couple of things, from what I get from the debate is the fact that we are sort of, hinging upon debating whether a particular religion is misogynistic, patriarchal or not. I don't think that matters. Does this generally, in a larger ground, address some of the gender inequality issues that we have been facing? Yes, it does. Whether it comes to divorce, whether it comes to polygamy, whether it comes to inheritance laws, whether it comes to even having an illegitimate child and their rights to inheritance, I think it's a very finely tuned law. Of course, we've also seen questions being raised, and by and large, I agree that everybody should be under the ambit of this, irrespective of their ways of life or religion, including tribal communities. But having worked in tribal areas for over 15 years, specifically in the Northeast, I having worked there, I can tell you that there has been policies of exclusion and isolations amongst tribal communities. Therefore, as we mentioned earlier, the environment has to be conducive. The 8.5% population of tribals in this country, have to be, brought out of the kind of policies we've had for decades that have isolated them, wherein the development has not been equal, before we bring in any laws like this that is not conducive to their own autonomy. They even have administrative autonomy. Therefore, and one can also argue in the other way that in the Northeast, there are many communities that are matrilineal in nature, that are matriarchal in nature, that have a lot of gender equality as well as inequality as there would be. But having said that, I think the debate on the tribal should be set aside at this point till we make the environment conducive enough for them to accept this. There are special provisions for them in the Constitution, therefore we need to respect that. But by and large, does this impact greater gender equality? In my opinion, it does, and therefore it should be welcomed, And I don't think this is the time to debate which religion has, inequality and which doesn't, This is, addressing basic problems that women were facing, like polygamy. And I think, they should be welcomed.
Okay, John Dayal, You know, Rami Desai is making a point. In fact, that's not just Rami Desai who's made it. All the women on the panel seem to have made this point. I'm just coming to you. Let me just ask this one question, Mr. John Dayal, that it really isn't about one religion. And we had to get into religions because there were references made to certain religions. But it's not about one particular religion vis-a-vis the other religions. The point is a larger kind of an interpretation that seems to come in from UCC. What essentially would you say would be your concern with this particular thing of why is it not acceptable to you?
I would pick up on Ramiji's point. Is the environment, is the atmosphere conducive to this targeting essentially of a community? Polygamy is not allowed in Christians most of the places other than Adivasi belt. So I'm not particularly impacted personally, but I take that argument, are we at a time, or do you think it is politically conducive to limit it to these issues of halala and talaq and polygamy, understanding fully well that these are practices that occur elsewhere, and by not referring to them in such stark terms, you are in fact limiting your own political field. Allow people to reform themselves, to advance. And as you said, women and the other genders must have all autonomy. Why not? Let's strengthen them. I am all for all women and all parents, etc., entitled to a working child's income, as much as the child is entitled on my death to my income. Why should there be a difference between a mother, a stepmother, a wife, a daughter? Why differentiate between women? So there is this thing. My last point is political and social reforms essentially impact the better off people. What point is property to a man who has no land? What point is a bank balance division to a man who's absolutely, abjectly, starvingly poor?
All right, Rami, you have your hands raised. You will be the last. I will be able to come to just about you for your last comments, just about 30 seconds to a minute to you, Rami. But you know what John Dayal has also spoken is a concern that has been reiterated. Many people have said they don't really have issues with what the UCC has offered largely. The concerns remain the environment, which you mentioned, and the conditioning around which this has come up. And that's how would you look at this?
Is that question to me?
Yes, please.
Is that question to
Rami
me?
Desai, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to answer
That's
it.
right, Rami Desai, please go ahead.
I'm going to just answer it because I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. You know, this entire idea of it's majoritarian and we don't have the environment, you know, there were many opinions that were considered, lakhs and lakhs of opinions that were considered before, you know, the initial format of this was also made. But having said that, you know, in other countries where you have the UCC, is it considered Christian majoritarianism when the UCC has been brought in? When there is a uniform civil code? The only example Mr. Dayal could give was of the indigenous population in America, which has a different set of autonomy, you know, which is similar to India, you know, wherein our tribal communities have autonomy, you know. But apart from that, a civil code, you know, irrespective of religion, brought in by any government in any Western world is not ever seen as majoritarianism. But it is seen here specifically, in my opinion, because there is a bias against the BJP. If it was maybe another, you know, another country, another party, another day, it wouldn't have been seen like that. I think this sort of political and politicization of gender inequality is possibly the worst thing we could do at a time like this, when there is gender equality, an attempt being made to bring that in, and an attempt being made to codify it. You know, so I think politicization of this by looking
last 30
at
seconds,
it from a
John Dayal. Last 30 seconds. 30 seconds to you, John Dayal, and 30 seconds to you, Advocate Ahmed Hayaz. John Dayal, you may not be new to this at all. Gender equality being pegged vis-a-vis a political bias. This may not be new, but your 30 seconds on this, please.
No, I really would not deny the fact that I'm not a member of the BJP party. So let's throw it out of the way. What good points of Christianity and Islam have been included in this UCC?
Okay, all right. Advocate Ahmed, I asked 30 seconds to respond to what Rami said.
No, see, thinking of this UCC may not be proper. Why? Because people have their established their own traditions and cultures with different communities, and bringing them together on may not be all, but on certain things may not be fair enough. And so far as certain points have been brought out, those are just a misgiving. As long as triple talaq is concerned, divorcing is concerned, it's a misgiving. The laws itself are not bad. Somebody must be practicing individually wrongly. That's a different thing. And then again, a clarification which I would like to say is that the daughters have the share in their parents' share. Nobody says that. Nobody can say that they don't have. They may not be getting equivalent to the son. That is different. That is again a reason.
Okay, I'm
that
sorry.
Again
I'll really have to
background.
I'll
But
really have to interfere at this
getting the
point.
share.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for putting your comments, sir. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. This is something that will require repeated attempts at understanding the different perspectives involved in this. But it's going to be hard to justify the existing personal laws across religions, including all perhaps for that matter. But would UCC be an acceptable alternative is also something that needs to be seen across stakeholders. Thank you very much for joining us.